All right, y'all. So we already know that we just had the Titans game the other day, and I think the defense took a step back. Now, understand this is preseason, so we're not going to see a lot of these guys get playtime, but I do think it's worth noting, some of these guys could be very much next up if, some guys get hurt. And I want to talk about their play and the execution of it because I'm not worried about the offense. The offense will come because we are not playing any starters, but we got to talk about that defense, man, because it's the main question on the team. So without further ado, let's go and get into it. So this first one I want to look at, it's not like necessarily game breaking. Well, it is in a sense, but it's one of those underrated plays where, if you don't make the play right here, it could be 6 points. So right here, defensively, we're in some kind of match-based defense. We actually end up dropping 8. We're going to send these 3 guys. We're going to drop James Pierce Jr. out. I know y'all don't like that, but we're in an odd defense, so it's going to happen. But as far as the coverage wise, on this bunch, we're playing lock and level. So what that means is we're going to lock the point right here, and then we're going to have these 2 guys play match on these 2 guys. So if this guy goes under, that's going to be Mike Ford. If this guy goes out, that'll be Lamar Jackson. So it's pretty much first in, first out. We're going to lock the point. That's pretty much how you do it. Remember, since we're always 3-by-1, we typically lock the backside. So think AJ Terrell is going to be right here. And then if anything is a fast 2 right here, the linebacker will match it. And then everything else is pretty much zone dropping, in my opinion. So if we look at how this plays out, I initially thought this was man coverage, but it's not. It's really just, zone match. But one of these plays right here is I like the guy we just signed, Ronnie Harrison. He makes this play right here. Now think about it. If he was just kind of sitting here watching the quarterback and then reacted, no, then this is probably a walk-in touchdown because I think he'll get past whoever this is. But good thing, being very aware. Like, I know he's probably not one of the best saving products, but like I said, you never really miss when you draft these guys because they can play their role and they're really smart, and that's a very smart play. So let's go get into the next one. All right, so this one kind of blurry right here, but this is the interception by Natron Brooks. So if we look at the coverage, we're gonna get cover 3. So we're gonna get a middle third right here, outside thirds by our corners, and we're gonna have a buzz player right here. He's gonna play in the buzz. This is also a buzz. This is a curl to flat. Braylon Trice is playing curl to flat, and we got our 4-man rush right here. And then if we just go ahead and go just a little bit forward, we're gonna just look at the route progression. So this is a deep over route right here. Then we're going to get a deep stop. And then we're going to get this guy going out into the flat right here. So if we're gonna read this, we're checking the coverage. We're expecting cover 3 right here because we know this is gonna take this middle safety out, okay? And then it just becomes a read on this curl flat defender right here, okay? We're expecting a bail by this corner, so we can just hook that up underneath him. And once again, we're just gonna be reading this curl flat defender. So if he expands, that's what he does, right? If he expands on this flat route, you're gonna hit your curl. But if he gets depth up under this curl right here, he plays that true curl to flat, you're going to hit this right here, right? This is an alert pass because you only want this against certain looks. So if it's man to man, you're going to take that. But since we know it's cover 3, we're not going to look for it. We're just going to be reading 1 to 2. And the beauty of this is that Natron Brooks saw it the whole way because, like AJ Terrell said, we saw this the entire week where they ran this kind of pattern right there. And so Natron Brooks was keying it the whole time. He's in his bail, but he's just looking. He's waiting on it. He's anticipating it. And then he comes back and makes a play on that ball. But if we also look at James Pierce Jr., my favorite rookie, honestly, he beats that tackle around the edge and forces him just slightly to throw it off target, throw it right in front of him instead of throwing it. Now, instead of throwing it like to his back shoulder, he threw it out in front of him, and that was because of the pressure right there, because he kind of had to, get that arm out. And it caused an interception, and we were able to flip the field. I don't know how we didn't get 6 points out of this because we started damn near in the red zone, but that's a good play by Natron Brooks and James Pierce Jr. All right, so this play right here is the pass breakup by D. Now we will get into him in another video, but I just want to break this down because a lot of people say he got away with the hold, but we're here to break it down. So we're gonna talk about what really happened. So top of the screen, we're running something called shock, where you have a stick route by the number 3 receiver. He can hook it down if it's zone and keep going out if he's getting matched by the first guy inside, or if the safety's on him. Then you're going to get a slot fade by the number 2, which you want to hit this if you have cover 1 man press, which is the look right now. That's what we're getting. And then we're going to get a hitch right here. Okay. So once again, if we're talking man coverage, also down here is a curl, and then he's going to check and he's going to release right here. Okay. So if we're thinking coverages, if we get any 2 deep coverages, we're going to work the stick, right? But if we get, say if we get corners off and he's playing right here, he's playing right there, we're going to read this stick progression. And if we get too high, we're going to read it regardless. But we only throw this slot fade if we get press man in a single high safety, and that's what we get. So Cam Ward made a great decision right here. Okay. And so D also he's doing a good job because he's kind of smart. Y'all may say what you want, but he's not stupid, right? So he has outside leverage, and he has to get outside of him in order to get, to this landmark, as I'm talking about the receiver. But he gives up the leverage. However, he's able to stay in position, right? Now, he did lose the leverage, which I don't like, but he was still able to stay in his hip pocket just a little bit and start hand fighting. And when you hand fight with the receiver, they're not going to call that. And it was somewhat of an inaccurate ball too, right? Even though I'm not saying inaccurate as he missed the target, but he kind of overthrew it, because even if that was a perfect ball, I think D can probably get his hand in there, right? But nonetheless, it's a good play by Cam because he recognized where to go, but also a good play by D to kind of force that timing off, because look, I believe if he just lets him take that speed release and go out, right, he doesn't force that little hezzy right there, that's probably completion. But he had that outside leverage, and it caused that little bit of hesitation, and it threw it off just by that much. And when it's a game of inches, you can really tell it's a game of inches, because this is so timing based. And you see, look at Cam Ward. We're gonna look at this drop right here. Look, you're supposed to catch 1, 2, 3. He's ready to throw it right there. He's ready to throw it, but D is late, or D makes it just a little bit later, and he has to wait just a minute, and then he ends up overthrowing it, right? So that's good stuff from D to keep him off timing, because that's all you want as an offense. All right, so I want to get into something that was good and bad. So this is good on the account of Braylon Trice for blowing this play up, but like, this is one of the things that I'm kind of skeptical of as far as like how this defensive front plays. So if we look at the run scheme right here, we're going to get power. So they're going to motion Chig Okonkwo over, and then they're going to motion him back across with this guard. You're going to get him to be the kick out on Braylon Trice. Then you're going to have this left guard be the lead blocker on the wrap, okay? And since we know it's power, everybody else is going to be blocking down. So we have a block down right here, okay? Everybody's blocking back, if that makes sense, right? He's going to get to the second level, and he's going to also get to the second level. We can find the nearest DB, okay? So, and then he's also going to run him upfield, right? So what I like about this is, if we're going to look at the positives first, Braylon Trice, he does a good job of taking on his kick out block. And I'm thinking just by watching his whole game that I think he and Jalen Walker are going to be the early down edges, because they are very good against the run, right? So he sees the tight end is going away, so he's squeezing that down, and he sees the guy coming around be the kick out. He's going to take on the kick out and knock him back, right? He knocks him back into the running back, and that forces him off. And then he gets in on the tackle, and JD Bertrand also gets in too, right? One thing I do like about JD, he's a good run defender, because he just gets off of that tight end and he just goes right through him and then wraps this guy up. But then if we get to like the negatives, the one thing that we can't run into, or as far as problems, is when we play those gap scheme teams that run a lot of gap schemes. So think about Lions, the Packers, the good teams, the Eagles. Those are the three teams we have to get through in order to, do things. They will run gap scheme on us, because Nate Ollie says, okay, play in a dark room, get DTFO. Gap scheme, they encourage like just straight up penetration. If we want to, if he wants to just get upfield and go, let him, cool. We can just ride him out of the play. And that's exactly what happened with this guy right here. Because look, he just gets upfield and he's going to get rolled out the play. And he also just gets put on his ass. So that's one thing I don't like about this, because if we play teams that run gap scheme, if we just have guys shoot up the field, then it's not going to be necessarily a good thing. We have to be able to hold our gap and just blow up the run and take on these kickouts and pullers just like that. And so it's a good play, but it's just one thing to keep in mind of when we're going against teams like this. All right, so this play right here is a touchdown play against Jordan Fuller. I put this on Jordan Fuller because of his technique, but if we want to look at what the offense is doing, so they're doing all go special. So this is how we scored against Washington in that fourth down, where you're going to have mandatory outside releases by your number one receivers, okay? And then you're going to have your seam reads by the number two receivers, okay? And we also know that they have this option to bend back inside if we get a too high coverage, and that's exactly what we get. So defensive, like I said before, we're in cover 6, so we have a deep half by Jordan Fuller. We're going to have a flat player in Lamar Jackson. This is a wall 2, because since it's cover 6, you're going to get more match based stuff. This is a wall 2, so that means with this guy running up the seam, he's going to match him vertically, okay? That's what we mean by wall 2. we're going to have the 3 rec right here, which means he's going to open up towards the number 3 receiver, or in this case, the running back. If it's a 2x2, you open up to the running back, and that's exactly what he does. So he's going to open up this way and then settle in his zone. You're going to have D being the quarter flat, which means he can just deliver this guy to the safety and then look for work, okay? Then you're going to have this guy who's manned up pretty much backside. And he's also responsible for the number 2. So this is the quarter, this is a half, right? And where it goes wrong is Jordan Fuller. I put this on him because Ronnie Harrison was in the right spot. Now, we all know when we play cover 2, you're supposed to expand, okay? That means you have to open up the middle of the field. Now, I'm just doing this because, you know, say it's actual cover 2, but if we just play this forward just a little bit, okay? Now, most people coach, when you get to your landmark is on the numbers. And he gets to the numbers, cool, but he got a little bit too far outside of them numbers, okay? And what I would like to see him do is, you know, get to the numbers and then drop. You know, you're supposed to midpoint these two, and I understand he had a vertical stretch by this outside receiver. However, you have to be able to midpoint this with precision. And if anything, you know the weakness of, you know, this coverage, it's a open coverage. That means you have the middle of the field wide open. If anything, you force the harder throw, which is this go right down the boundary. Okay, you force that throw. You favor this seam right here. I know this may sound Monday morning, but like this is like real stuff people are getting taught when they're playing these, you know, these middle field open coverages, okay? You know the weakness is in the middle of the field, and you know anything in breaking like a post or a deep end cut right here can threaten that, you know, threatens that weak spot. So I understand he's getting off his landmark or getting to his landmark, which is the deep half, and midpointing these two guys. But you can't overplay this deep golf ball, especially when you have a guy, he's going to be playing trail technique up under it, right? Especially with a shorter field, he has to pretty much put that in the perfect spot, right? Because if he slightly underthrows it, it's an interception. If he overthrows it, then it's out of bounds, okay? And then if we just look at how this plays out, he gets a little bit too far, and he isn't able to recover in time, and it's an amazing play by a good tight end. You know, he's a rookie, but very good tight end that they got. So good play, but we have to be a little bit better in execution. We can't get too far outside the numbers right here and then put ourselves in a position where we can't recover in coverage, okay? He had this problem in the first game where he had a lot of coverage busts, but we just didn't talk about it. I'm not gonna get on somebody, you know, just for the purpose of being negative, but he had a lot of coverage busts in that last video or in the last game, and it kind of showed his head right here. So gotta watch out for that, man. All right, this is another like spotty clip right here where we're looking at bad run defense. So if we just pay attention to what's going on, they're doing a simple outside zone run to the boundary, which a lot of teams do, honestly. So I'm not really mad about what they're doing. But the one thing I am mad about is Lamar Jackson. We all know Lamar Jackson had a very bad game, okay? And we also know that if you watch my Michael Penix Jr. video, that when you have a nub tight end on the backside of a trips, now this counts as a nub tight end, this corner becomes a part of the run responsibility, okay? And usually they're supposed to be the force player, but I'm assuming right here that D Malone is the force player. He's gonna force his run back inside, and he's gonna get this new C gap right here, or A, B. Yeah, he's gonna get the C gap. And then say the run goes this way, he's gonna force this back into his help, which is all over here, right? You would think that's what would happen, correct? But no, this isn't what happened. So if we play it through just a little bit, this is my issue. We see that it's a zone run, and we know we're gonna get a combo on this guy up to you. You have to know that, right? You have to know that. So my problem is where he's shooting the inside gap when somebody's already showing their face in that gap. Okay, and if you've been watching here for a while, we already know, I've been saying it for forever, run defense is really a team thing, because if one person looks bad, everybody looks bad, right? Now, D Malone, he's not necessarily doing a bad job of, you know, holding that hard edge, but his issue is he tries to move inside, which also forces this guy, okay, I'm gonna keep taking it outside. But look, once again, that whole team aspect comes into play right here, because Lamar Jackson, he shoots this inside gap, he trips this guy up, and now you're able to get a 9-yard run because you want to be greedy and shoot a run gap that you weren't supposed to be in. You're supposed to keep that outside gap. I don't care that he's doubling to you. You try to get on his outside shoulder and at least force this run to go back into where your help is, right? That's what you're coached to do, but you don't shoot that gap right there. But very bad game. I'm really not expecting him to make the roster after this game. I don't know how he comes back from this, because it was terrible. And stuff like this, I'm not even getting to his coverage woes, but run defense was awful, coverage was awful, and let's go and get to the next clip, man. This was bad. Okay, this is another clip where there's some good and some bad, so we're gonna break it down. So this is the touchdown run by the Titans, and we just want to talk about it because even though it was a touchdown run, I saw some good things about it, right? So when we look at, you know, this, once again, this defensive philosophy where it's like GTFO, get off the ball, play in the dark room, rep our style, all of that, you know, we're gonna get straight penetration by these guys, okay? And what I do like about it is that against this zone run, we have our interior guy right here. I don't know, I can't tell his number. I think it's Lakel London. He gets upfield very well and he forces that cutback. And James Pierce Jr. sets a hard edge on the outside where he has to turn his hips and pretty much saying, hey, this running back, he can't keep going outside, because if he were to keep going outside, James can just disengage and go take him on, right? But since he sets that hard edge on the outside, he isn't able to do that, okay? Now, he also just kind of holds a stalemate right here at the line of scrimmage, and then he's just hand fighting with this guy being the backside contained, okay? The defensive line did a good job. What I don't like is these two guys. Ronnie Harrison had a decent game, but this was one of the bad plays where he did his good job of initially tracking the run, but then he got dead feet, and this guy was easily able to climb and take him out the play. And then Natron Brooks, who also had a decent game as well, he made a bad play right here, okay? So he didn't make a bad play. It's just, you know, when we see this crack right here, it's a crack replace. So that means you're going to replace that safety in the run fit. And he does that. He gets points for doing that. But what he doesn't do is that he also gets dead feet. And he also gets ran back into his teammate. And now he has to sit here and try to arm tackle, which I don't blame him. Because, you know, your feet are dead and now you have to arm tackle. And he's kind of small, so he's not going to necessarily get him on the ground. But when you come out and you replace this crack block, you have to force that running back to do something. You can't sit and wait, because he's just gonna run by you, and that's exactly what he did, right? If anything, you know, you probably can shoot this gap, but knowing him, the running back, he's probably seen it, and he's probably gonna, you know, bounce it outside again, which you have your outside help. James is right there. But I'm not necessarily worried about this because these guys are gonna be starting, but it's just something it's like, you know, you want to look at and see what guys are doing, because if these guys actually play, this is what we got to rely on, these guys, right? Ronnie Harrison wasn't bad. Natron Brooks wasn't bad, but this is a bad play by these guys, but it was a great play by our defensive line for the most part, okay? And that's really all I want to show y'all, because even though bad plays happen as a result, you know, there are some good things you can take from it, which is stuff like this, where you see the defensive line on the front side doing their job, but then, you know, the second level doesn't really come through. And like I said before, run defense is a team thing. One person's out of place, the whole thing is thrown off of place or thrown out of whack. And you saw what happened. We get a rushing touchdown allowed just because of that. Now, I'm not pressing the panic button because it is preseason. A lot of those guys aren't the starters, okay? But it's still worthy to take note of, you know, how those guys are playing. Scheme-wise, I'm not really worried. At this point, it's just really about execution and these guys getting their stuff right. So I'm not really worried. Offense is going to come. Defense will come along too with the starters in the game. But let me know how you guys feel about it. If you guys do enjoy this, be sure to like and subscribe for more. I will have more stuff coming today. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.